What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel, High PSI TV. Today we are going to talk about how to properly store your motorcycle for the winter. Now, riding seasons differ depending on where you live. I live in North Carolina. I actually went riding last weekend and it was 55 degrees, which is way too cold for this guy. I'm originally from Michigan. You'd think I'd be used to the cold, but I am not. I was wearing a bunch of layers and had a mask on and all sorts of stuff, and I made it about 10 miles and decided that I shouldn't be out on the roads anymore. But anyway, this is my bike here. It is a Twisted Choppers frame with a Buell running gear, basically. So 1200cc, 5-speed transmission. The wheels, tires, and brakes are all what you would find on a Buell. The forks are off of a Buell. And then it's got a custom frame, custom tank, custom rear fender, and so on. But anyway, what I'm going to do is go over basics that'll apply to any motorcycle before you store it for the winter. And this will be a quick video because it's actually not that hard to do. So I've got this up on the lift just so it's a little bit easier to see. Kind of sketchy. I don't have a motorcycle lift, so this is what we're working with. But I wanted to get it up in the air a little bit just so it's a little bit easier to see and I don't have to crouch down to work on the thing and hold the camera on the floor and whatnot. So anyway, let's jump right into this. All right, so I know a lot of people that like to drain their fuel out of whatever they're storing for the winter before they put it away. I'm against that. I am a fill the fuel kind of guy and then put stable in it, let it run for a second so that you can get the stable into the carburetor and your fuel lines and all that. It'll help keep your fuel from deteriorating and gumming up your carburetor and stuff like that. So I'm going to fill up the fuel on this real quick. I run 110 leaded race gas in it because I like the way it smells. But fill it up with whatever you normally run, and then we're going to add a little bit of stable in it, and we'll let it run and get all that run through the system. So this is the fuel additive that I use. I'm not going to show you guys what it is, just in case copyright stuff, but this tank only holds about 1.5 gallons, so I just have to put a splash of this stuff in, and then we'll fire it up and let it run for a second. Normally you want to let it run for a couple of minutes, but just to keep the video short, I'll do that, and then I'll come back later and finish running the bike. Okay, step number 2 is to check the rest of your fluids. So what I'm talking about is brake fluid, transmission fluid if you have any. And basically that's about it on a bike. If your bike is liquid cooled, check your radiator, make sure that it's full. And if you normally run just water in your bike, if you ever get below freezing, be sure that you add antifreeze to your cooling system. And be sure that it's cycled through everything just to make sure that you're not freezing the engine in the middle of winter and, you know, cracking your block or anything like that. All right, moving on to step number 3, that's going to be changing your oil. And I'll tell you why I do this before the winter. I like having all clean fluids in the bike before I put it away. And that way when riding season comes around, you're ready to go. You don't have to worry about changing your oil and checking all your other fluids, putting plugs in it if you need to. This bike, I just changed the oil about a month ago. I did that because I had a real bad oil leak that I had to fix. So this has fresh oil and filter already in it. But Pretty simple on a Buell. Filters here. There's a drain plug on the bottom of the crankcase. Drain it out, put a new filter on, and then this is your oil tank here where you fill it. So once I fill it, what I like to do is disconnect the coil behind this cover, and then I'll crank the bike over to move oil through the engine and keep checking my tank, and then I'll fire it up when I'm done with that. But since that's already done, I don't have to do that step, so we're going to move on to the next. All right, step number next for me is the battery. So last year I left the battery connected to the bike all year and it fired back up, but it was only stored for about 3 months. So what I'm going to do this year is I'm actually going to put a battery tender on it. But when I put a battery tender on something that's going to be stored away for a long time, I also disconnect the battery. So as you can see down here below the oil tank is the battery, and this is the negative side of the battery. So what I'm going to do is disconnect these 2 wires from the battery and tuck them up out of the way. And then what you'll do is connect your battery tender to your positive on this side, your negative on this side. And if you get a good battery tender, they're smart, which means when the battery becomes fully charged, it'll shut itself off. And it'll look for the battery voltage to drop. When it does, it'll come back on and it'll charge your battery back up, basically maintaining the charge in your battery. So if you ride every day or if you drive your car every day, the battery is constantly being charged and discharged, which is what keeps batteries good. They don't like sitting just dormant and not being used. So the battery tender will help keep that charge up and make sure that when you're ready to ride in the summer, so is the bike. All right, the next step, and this is an important step for me coming from a drag racing background and working with a lot of radial tires and slicks, you want to make sure that when you store your bike, you pump up your tires to the maximum inflation that they can go. And what this does is it helps them from flat spotting. And also you want to check your tires when they're cold. If you just came off the road, they might have a little bit of heat in them, so the tire pressure is going to be a little bit higher. So I'm going to get the numbers off these tires real quick, and then I'm going to pump them up as high as they'll go because I store my bike on the ground. Now, if you're lucky enough you have a lift, a bike lift, and you can store it off the ground, you don't have to worry about your tires flat spotting. But one of the worst feelings in the world is when you get on your bike and your tires have flat spotted over the winter, it'll just sit there and bounce and it'll vibrate and it'll try to knock you off the bike. So I'm going to look and see what these tires are supposed to be set at, and then we're going to fill them up. Found the numbers on both tires and they're supposed to be at 42. I'm going to tell you right now, this bike is a rigid frame and I do not ride with 42 pounds of air in the back tire. If I did, it would be horrible. It would bounce me all over the place. So I ride with 13.5 pounds of air in the rear tire. And I've never had a problem with it, you know, bottoming out on the rim or anything like that. So rigid guys, I know we run lower tire pressures, but to keep the tire round over the winter, I'm gonna jack them both up just to make sure I don't flat spot. Okay, something else that I really like to do, especially on this bike, and I'll tell you why, is I like to nut and bolt the entire bike, at least the really important stuff like brakes, handlebars, forks, your wheels, forward controls, stuff like that. What happened to me once is I was riding down the road and there used to be a bolt right up in here that helps hold the gas tank to the frame. And what happened was as I was riding, the bolt fell down into my throttle linkage. I went to pass someone and I opened the throttle and the bolt wedged itself in between the throttle linkage and the base of the carburetor. Basically, it held the bike wide open. First instinct, pull the clutch in, motor revs to the moon, so I let the clutch back out and start hauling ass down the road. And long story short, I was able to get the bike shut off, going way too fast. The key fell out of the ignition. I had to walk about half a mile back down the road, found it, it had been run over. So I had to hammer it back into the ignition switch, and I haven't taken it out since because it will probably never go back in. But be sure that you nut and bolt your stuff, especially you rigid guys, because I've had bolts fall out of this bike, and it is not cool. So again, I won't show you a video of me going over the nuts and bolts on this bike. I'll probably do it tomorrow, but you get the idea. Be sure that your bolts are tight. If they need Loctite on them, be sure they get it. If they need a lock washer on them, be sure they get it. Because bolts falling in your throttle linkage or your pedals falling off, handlebars getting loose, is no fun when you're out on a ride. All right, so this is the last step before we put it away, and that's to clean your bike. And for me, this is something that I really don't like doing. I hate cleaning cars, I hate cleaning bikes. It's just repetitive and I don't like it. I know guys that love detailing. They will clean their bikes meticulously, go out and ride them, bring them home and clean them again. Luckily, this bike is black and it doesn't show dirt that bad, but I can assure you it's pretty dirty right now. So I'm going to grab a rag and start cleaning. I'll time lapse this real quick. I'm just going to give it a good once over with some quick detail, do the wheels and stuff like that. And then I will show you what I do last before I put it away. So that basically covers everything. I am going to throw the cover over this real quick just so you guys can see. It's just a cheap little cover. I think it was like 20 bucks, but it'll help keep the dust off of it. And you know, that way you don't have to clean your bike again when you pull it out of storage. So that's going to do it for getting your bike ready to store for winter. Now, if I missed anything, I'm sure you guys will be sure to tell me. But really, it's a simple process. And if you make an evening out of it, it doesn't take that long to do. And then when you're ready to ride next year, you don't have to go through all this maintenance and stuff to get your bike ready to go. Personally, when I'm ready to ride, I'm ready to ride. I don't want to have to dig the bike out, put it in the garage, and do all this stuff when it's nice out. And I want to be on the bike, not working on the bike. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. And be sure that you find me on Instagram. I'll put my username right here. Go find me. I'm looking for some more followers on Instagram. I post a lot of stuff from the shop, RPM Motorsports. I post stuff from the house and when I'm out racing. So I don't always have the GoPro with me, but I always have my phone with me, and I try to post some cool stuff up on Instagram, so be sure you go check that out. And also, I still have t-shirts and hats for sale. Always a link in the description below. And next video, hopefully, I'll be putting that thing together. So the fuel pump rebuild is moving right along. Unfortunately, I got the wrong parts from the Packard supply store, so they are being shipped. Hopefully, I'll have them by this weekend. So that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time.